To move the motion.
I beg to move that this House has considered transport in Nottinghamshire. Sir George, it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this afternoon, and I'd also like to congratulate the Minister on her inaugural Westminster Hall debate. May I also thank colleagues from across our great county for attending today's debate, and I look forward to hearing their contributions. And I know that had their ministerial obligations allowed them to do so, other county colleagues would be here as well. I would, if I may, Sir George, like to take you on a journey to the heart of England, where the English Civil War began and ended, to a place that gave the world Boots the Chemist, D.H. Lawrence and Alan Sillitoe, Nicholas Hawksmoor and Sir Paul Smith, Torval and Dean, Ken Clarke and Ed Balls. The strapline of Nottingham City Council used to be "Our style is legendary," and I submit that across the arts and sciences, from medicine to sport, from politics to business to literature, Nottingham and Nottinghamshire compete not only on a national but an international stage. But in a global world, connectivity is key, and therefore it is appropriate, I submit, to talk about transport in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, recent successes, and what more we need to do. Because our great county isn't one of forests and bows and arrows. Its legendary style is taking us into the future. Nottinghamshire is to host the world's first fusion energy power plant at a site near Retford, bringing billions of pounds and thousands of jobs to the region. The East Midlands Freeport, including at the Ratcliffe-on-Soar power station site in Rushcliffe, is the UK's only inland freeport and promises to position the region as a green tech trailblazer, drive significant new job growth in the region, as well as local and international trade. But we need the funding to match these ambitions. East Midlands Chamber and East Midlands Councils analysed the Treasury's latest public expenditure statistical analysis for 2021. They found that there was a particular deficit in transport infrastructure spending at just 64.7% of the UK average for 2020-21, the joint lowest of any UK region or nation. If the East Midlands was funded at a level equivalent to the national average, it would have an extra £1.26 billion per year to spend on transport. Over the past 10 years, there has been a growing gap in transport spend between the East and West Midlands, where spend has been rising. In 2016-17, the £217 per head spent on transport in the East Midlands was two-thirds of the £322 received by the West Midlands. And by 2019 to 2020, this had declined to 61%. But before speaking as to how we might remedy this, may I first praise the good news. I welcome the publication of the Integrated Rail Plan in 2021, which offers a £96 billion package. The Sun newspaper described the East Midlands as the big winners of this plan, and I'm particularly keen to see High Speed 2 come to Nottinghamshire, reducing not only travel times to London, but also to reduce the journey time from Nottingham to Birmingham from 74 minutes to 26 minutes. John Lewis might have closed their store in central Birmingham, but the residents of Edgbaston and Sellyoke will have no trouble coming to Nottingham to shop. May I also welcome the Integrated Rail Plan's inclusion of the full electrification of the Midland Main Line. I know this has been a long time coming. As an 18-year-old, I remember attending my first Conservative parliamentary selection meeting for the 2001 general election and hearing the campaign hopefuls talking about it then, but we seem finally to be making progress on that. And I asked the Minister to confirm that the Government remains committed to delivering the Integrated Rail Plan in full, particularly with plans for the East Midlands generally, and Nottinghamshire in particular, and that recent announcements about Northern Powerhouse Rail will not affect the county. Of course.
I welcome his securing of this debate on such an important topic. But does he share my concern that we have been promised investment in East Midlands transport many times only to be disappointed with schemes such as the electrification of Midland Main Line promised and then withdrawn? Does he share my concern that we are having to wait longer and longer for the improved transport services that our region needs? And does he share my hope that the Minister will be actually able to commit to some timescales for the completion of both the electrification and the HS2 link to East Midlands?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her intervention. She comes to this debate with more experience as a Nottinghamshire MP, having been in this House for some time, and I think also as a chair of the Transport Select Committee, or former chair, she speaks with some experience on this issue in particular. But I say I come here optimistically and hopeful that we will see the progress that perhaps has eluded us for too long. But our railways, George, are not just about intercity travel. Getting into and out of cities from suburbs, towns and villages is equally important. The integrated rail plan offered, business case permitting, investment in the Robin Hood and Maid Marian lines. So I asked the Minister whether these schemes are included in the Department Acceleration Unit's portfolio of projects. And in my own constituency of Gedling, we have 3 railway stations, Burton Joyce, Carlton and Netherfield, that are not being used to their full potential. They are pleasant stations, but local residents complain to me that if there is a train to take them to work in the morning, there isn't necessarily a train to take them home. And too many trains pass through Gedling stations without stopping, and rail services don't run late enough for the train to be an option for those travelling to the City of Nottingham for leisure. This can and must be remedied. Improvements on these lines between Nottingham and Lincoln and Grantham can help to make rail competitive with car journeys. I know that the Minister will be receiving a business case from Midlands Connect in the new year on how to make improvements on this line, and I asked whether she can make a quick determination on these proposals, and if she would like any help, if she would like to visit any of these stations to help her understand the problem, she would be more than welcome to visit. Now, Netherfield Station stands on the Grantham line, which runs south from Nottingham, which brings me to another serious topic, crossing the river. In King Henry IV Part 1, Hotspur speaks of the smoke and silver Trent. I wouldn't describe the Trent as silver these days, but perhaps the river had reason to feel smoke in February 2020, when it succeeded in bringing gridlock to Nottingham. There are 3 bridges across the River Trent in Greater Nottingham. The latest was opened to traffic in the early 1980s, having originally been built as a railway bridge in the 1870s. And over time, the growing city has had to rely on these existing connections, which lie in the centre or to the west of the city. In February 2020, it was discovered that water damage had corroded steelwork under the Clifton Bridge, the early dual carriageway crossing in Greater Nottingham, which caused a temporary closure of the East Bridge, which carries all eastbound traffic and 1 lane of westbound traffic while the bridge was repaired. The closure of the Clifton Bridge brought large parts of the city to a standstill at rush hour, including traffic on the A612 in Gedling on the other side of Greater Nottingham. Natalie Farhi, the editor of the Nottingham Evening Post, wrote at the time, "The closure of the Clifton Bridge means traffic has been chaotic, with journeys of just a few miles taking people hours to complete. The Queen's Medical Centre has been hard to reach, being stuck in the epicentre of the crisis. Throw into the mix a high-stakes forest game at home, and you've got a big Nottingham problem." She concluded, "The problem we've got is that there is no slack in our traffic system. We're incredibly vulnerable." Ms Farhi's analysis is, I submit, entirely right. And one remedy for this would be to construct a 4th crossing for road traffic across the River Trent in Greater Nottingham. A 4th Trent crossing to the east of the city would relieve the pressure on the existing system, and if constructed, for example, at Colwick, would complement the recently built Gedling access road. It would also provide better services, better access for residents in the eastern side of Nottingham to the A46. Midlands Connect has described the A46, which runs from Somerset to Lincolnshire, as one of the country's most important trade routes, performing an important local, regional and national function. The government has previously signalled its commitment to the importance of the A46 in Nottinghamshire by widening the single carriageway section between Newark and Witherpool, and there are plans for an A46 Newark bypass. A 4th Trent crossing would connect Gedling to the A46 corridor, and I spoke earlier about the East Midlands Freeport and the thousands of green jobs that it is destined to create. Well, I want my constituents to be able to access those jobs, and that is what a 4th Trent crossing would help to do. Now, a full bridge would be costly, and I appreciate infrastructure projects take time and need to go step by step. But I would be grateful if the Minister signals her support for a strategic outline business case for such a project, which would come in, even in these financially straitened times, at a much more manageable £150,000. Now, I must resist the temptation to be too Gedling-focused in any debate about Nottinghamshire, and as my honourable friend, the member for Broxtowe, cannot contribute to this debate, let me also mention Nottinghamshire's County Council's £40 million Levelling Up Fund bid for the financing of the planned Towton Link Road. The new link road would consist of a 1-mile single carriageway track between the A52 east of Bardolph Island and Stapleford Lane, taking the form of a high-quality landscape boulevard with significant tree planting and walking and cycling routes. And I know from the recently opened Gedling access road, which cost a similar amount, how transformative such a scheme can be. While I know the Minister will be instinctively coy about expressing any comment on levelling up fund bids, I perhaps gently ask whether her department can ensure the Department for Levelling Up is aware of the merits of these proposals. And I know that my honourable friend, the member for Broxtowe, would also want to mention bus services and the vital lifeline that they can provide for elderly and vulnerable constituents, citing in particular concern the withdrawal of the L10 and 11 services in Brancott, and now the withdrawal of number 21. I know that other honourable members will likely mention bus services too, but locally in Gedling, I do welcome the government's support through the bus service improvement plan that will be supporting a number of routes, including the 39, 53 and Line services from Arnold to the City of Nottingham. My comments in this debate so far have focused on the south of the county, and as someone who's born in Nottingham and lives in Arnold, I hope that is forgivable. I've tried to speak about that which I know. And my remarks have also covered projects that might be considered high level. And so in any discussion about transport in Nottinghamshire, I feel I ought to need to mention that concern of the average road user, potholes. It's no secret that Nottinghamshire's roads need a bit of TLC, and the issue has been the subject of numerous local newspaper reports. But there are two recent developments that I would particularly like to highlight. The County Council's decision to replace, where possible, the much-hated temporary tarmac out of a bag pothole repair system that seemed to disintegrate soon after workmen had tended to them, and a new patch repair way of cutting and filling which works much better, lasts longer and is much neater. And I applaud Conservative-run Nottinghamshire County Council's decision to spend an extra £15 million on road repairs. Residents in and around Westdale Lane in Carlton, to give just one example out of many, will much appreciate this forthcoming transformative investment. Now, I know we'll hear from the leader of Nottinghamshire County Council and others who will speak knowledgeably about the entire county, particularly the north, shortly. But in general terms, I am positive about the future possibilities for transport in Nottinghamshire and the forthcoming Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire devolution deal, which will see transport decisions made more locally. Sir George, Nottingham and Nottinghamshire's leaders have worked in partnership with government to deliver serious announcements for our region. I look forward to hearing colleagues' contributions this afternoon and how we can make sure that not only our style but also our transport is legendary.